My name is Karlesha. This is week 27, day 3 of the Bible in a Year Live Chronological Project. Let's meet the Lord in His Word. 2 Kings 1 through 4. Ahaziah's messengers meet Elijah. Now Moab broke with Israel after the death of Ahab, and Ahaziah fell through the window lattice in his upper chamber, which was in Samaria, and became ill. So he sent messengers and said to them, "Go inquire of Biayl.Zebub, the god of Ekron, whether I will recover from this sickness." But the angel of the Lord said to Elijah the Tishbite, "Arise, go up to meet the messengers of the king of Samaria, and say to them, Is it because there is no God in Israel that you are going to inquire of Biayl.Zebub, the god of Ekron? Now, therefore, this is what the Lord says. You will not get down from the bed upon which you have lain, but you shall certainly die." Then Elijah departed. When the messengers returned to Ahaziah, he said to them, "Why have you returned?" They said to him, "A man came up to meet us and said to us, 'Go, return to the king who sent you and say to him, This is what the Lord says. Is it because there is no God in Israel that you are sending messengers to inquire of Biayl.Zebub, the god of Ekron? Therefore, you will not get down from the bed upon which you have lain, but you shall certainly die." Then he said to them, "What did the man look like who came up to meet you and spoke these words to you?" And they said to him, "He was a hairy man with a leather belt worn around his waist." And he said, "It is Elijah the Tishbite." Then the king sent to him a captain of 50 with his 50 men. And he went up to him, and behold, he was sitting on the top of the hill. And he said to him, "You man of God, the king says, come down." But Elijah replied to the captain of 50, "If I am a man of God, may fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50. Then fire came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50 men. So the king again sent to him another captain of 50 with his 50 men. And he said to him, "You man of God, this is what the king says. Come down quickly." But Elijah replied to them, "If I am a man of God, may fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50. Then the fire of God came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50 men. So the king again sent the captain of a third 50 with his 50 men. When the third captain of 50 went up, he came and bowed down on his knees before Elijah and begged him and said to him, "You, man of God, please let my life and the lives of these 50 servants of yours be precious in your sight. Behold, fire came down from heaven and consumed the first 2 captains of 50 with their 50s. But now let my life be precious in your sight." And the angel of the Lord said to Elijah, "Go down with him. Do not be afraid of him." So he got up and went down with him to the king. Then he said to him, "This is what the Lord says. Since you have sent messengers to inquire of Biayl.Zebub, the god of Ekron, is it because there is no God in Israel to inquire of his word? Therefore, you will not get down from the bed upon which you have lain, but you shall certainly die." Jehoram reigns over Israel. So Ahaziah died in accordance with the word of the Lord, which Elijah had spoken. And since he had no son, Jehoram became king in his place. In the 2nd year of Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah. Now, as for the rest of the acts of Ahaziah, which he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel? Elijah taken to heaven. Now it came about when the Lord was about to bring Elijah up by a whirlwind to heaven, that Elijah left Gilgal with Elisha. And Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, please, for the Lord has sent me as far as Bethel." But Elisha said, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. Then the sons of the prophets who were at Bethel went out to Elisha and said to him, "Are you aware that the Lord will take away your master from over you today?" And he said, "Yes, I am aware. Say nothing about it." And Elijah said to him, "Elisha, please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho." But he said, "As surely as the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they came to Jericho. Then the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho approached Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that the Lord will take away your master from over you today?" And he answered, "Yes, I know. Say nothing about it." And Elijah said to him, "Please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to the Jordan." But he said, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So the two of them went on. Now 50 men of the sons of the prophets went and stood opposite them at a distance, while the two of them stood by the Jordan. And Elijah took his coat, folded it, and struck the waters, and they were divided here and there, so that the two of them crossed over on dry ground. When they had crossed over, Elijah said to Elisha, "Ask me what I should do for you before I am taken from you." And Elisha said, "Please, let a double portion of your spirit be upon me." He said, "You have asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if you see me when I am taken from you, it shall be so for you. But if not, it shall not be so." And as they were walking along and talking, behold, a chariot of fire appeared with horses of fire, and they separated the two of them. Then Elijah went up by a whirlwind to heaven, and Elisha was watching it, and he was crying out, my father, the chariot of Israel and its horsemen." And he did not see Elijah again. Then he took hold of his own clothes and tore them in two pieces. He also took up the coat of Elijah that had fallen from him, and he went back and stood by the bank of the Jordan. Then he took the coat of Elijah that had fallen from him and struck the waters and said, "Where is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" And when he also had struck the waters, they were divided here and there, and Elisha crossed over. Elisha succeeds Elijah. Now, when the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho opposite him saw him, they said, "The spirit of Elijah has settled on Elisha." And they came to meet him and bowed down to the ground before him. Then they said to him, "Behold now, there are with your servants 50 strong men. Please, let them go and search for your master, in case the Spirit of the Lord has taken him up and cast him on some mountain or into some valley." But he said, "You shall not send anyone." Yet, when they urged him until he was ashamed to refuse, he said, "Send them." So they sent 50 men, and they searched for 3 days, but did not find him. They returned to him while he was staying in Jericho. And he said to them, "Did I not say to you, do not go?" Then the men of the city said to Elisha, "Behold now, the sight of the city is pleasant, as my Lord sees, but the water is bad and the land is unfruitful." And he said, "Bring me a new jar and put salt in it." So they brought it to him. Then he went out to the spring of water and threw salt in it and said, "This is what the Lord says, I have purified these waters. There shall not come from there death or unfruitfulness any longer." So the waters have been purified to this day, in accordance with the word of Elisha which he spoke. Now he went up from there to Bethel, and as he was going up by the road, some young boys came out from the city and ridiculed him and said to him, "Go up, you bald head! Go up, you bald head!" When he looked behind him and saw them, he cursed them in the name of the Lord. Then 2 female bears came out of the woods and tore up 42 of the boys. He then went on from there to Mount Carmel, and from there he returned to Samaria. Jehoram meets Moabite rebellion. Now Jehoram, the son of Ahab, became king over Israel at Samaria in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and he reigned for 12 years. He did evil in the sight of the Lord, though not like his father and his mother, for he removed the memorial stone of Baal, which his father had made. Nevertheless, he clung to the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, into which he misled Israel. He did not abandon them. Now Mesha, the king of Moab, was a sheep breeder, and he used to make tribute payments to the king of Israel of 100,000 lambs and the wool of 100,000 rams. However, when King Ahab died, the king of Moab broke with the king of Israel. So King Jehoram left Samaria for battle at that time and mustered all Israel. Then he went and sent word to Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, saying, "The king of Moab has broken away from me. Will you go with me to fight against Moab?" And he said, "I will go up. Consider me yours, my people as your people, my horses as your horses." Then he said, "Which way shall we go up?" And he answered, "The way of the wilderness of Edom." So the king of Israel went with the king of Judah and the king of Edom, and they made a circuit of 7 days' journey. But there was no water for the army or for the cattle that followed them. Then the king of Israel said, "It is hopeless, for the Lord has called these 3 kings to hand them over to Moab." But Jehoshaphat said, "Is there no prophet of the Lord here, that we may inquire of the Lord by him?" And one of the kings of Israel's servants answered and said, "Elisha, the son of Japhat, is here, who used to pour water on the hands of Elijah." And Jehoshaphat said, "The word of the Lord is with him." So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat and the king of Edom went down to him. Now Elisha said to the king of Israel, "What business do you have with me? Go to your father's prophets and your mother's prophets." But the king of Israel said to him, "No, for the Lord has called these 3 kings together to hand them over to Moab." Elisha said, "As surely as the Lord of armies lives, before whom I stand, if I did not respect Jehoshaphat the king of Judah, I would not look at you nor see you. But now bring me a musician." And it came about when the musician played that the hand of the Lord came upon him. And he said, "This is what the Lord says. Make this valley full of trenches. For the Lord says this, you will not see wind, nor will you see rain. Yet that valley shall be filled with water, so that you will drink, you, your livestock, and your other animals. And this is an insignificant thing in the sight of the Lord. He will also give the Moabites into your hand. Then you shall strike every fortified city and every choice city, and cut down every good tree, and stop up all the springs of water, and spoil every good plot of land with stones." And it happened in the morning about the time of offering the sacrifice, that, behold, water came from the direction of Edom, and the country was filled with water. Now all the Moabites heard that the kings had come up to fight against them, and all who were able to put on armor and older were summoned, and they took their positions on the border. Then they got up early in the morning, and the sun shone on the water, and the Moabites saw the water opposite them as red as blood. So they said, "This is blood. The kings must have fought each other, and they have killed one another. Now then, Moab to the spoils." But when they came to the camp of Israel, And the Israelites rose up and struck the Moabites, so that they fled from them. And the Israelites invaded the land, killing the Moabites. So they destroyed the cities, and each one threw a stone on every plot of good land and filled it. So they stopped up every spring of water and cut down every tree, until in Karlesha only they left its stones. However, the rock slingers surrounded it and struck it. When the king of Moab saw that the battle was too fierce for him, he took with him 700 men who drew swords to break through the king of Edom. But they could not. Then the king of Moab took his oldest son, who was to reign in his place, and offered him as a burnt offering on the wall. And great anger came upon Israel, and they departed from him and returned to their own land. The widow's oil. Now a woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha, saying, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord, and the creditor has come to take my 2 children to be his slaves." So Elisha said to her, "What shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house?" And she said, "Your servant has nothing in the house except a jar of oil." Then he said, "Go, borrow containers elsewhere for yourself. Empty containers from all your neighbors. Do not get too few. Then you shall come in and shut the door behind you and your sons and pour into all these containers, and you shall set aside what is full." So she left him and shut the door behind her and her sons. They began bringing the containers to her, and she poured the oil. When the containers were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another container." But he said to her, "There are no more containers." Then the oil stopped. So she came and told the man of God, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debt, and you and your sons can live on the rest." The Shunammite woman. Now a day came when Elisha went over to Shunem, where there was a prominent woman, and she urged him to eat food. And so it was, as often as he passed by, that he turned in there to eat food. And she said to her husband, "Behold now, I am aware that this is a holy man of God passing by us repeatedly. Please, let's make a little walled upper room, and let's set up a bed for him there, and a table, a chair, and a lampstand. Then it shall be, when he comes to us, that he can turn in there." Now one day he came there and turned into the upper room and rested. Then he said to his servant Gehazi, "Call this Shunammite." And when he had called her, she stood before him. And he said to him, "Say now to her, Behold, you have taken trouble for us with all this care. What can I do for you? Would you like me to speak for you to the king or the commander of the army?" But she answered, "I live among my own people." So he said, "What then is to be done for her?" And Gehazi answered, "It is a fact that she has no son, and her husband is old." He then said, "Call her." When he had called her, she stood in the doorway. Then he said, "At this season next year, you are going to embrace a son." And she said, "No, my lord, you man of God, do not lie to your servant." Now the woman conceived and gave birth to a son at that season the next year, as Elisha had told her. The Shunammite's son. When the child was grown, the day came that he went out to his father to the reapers. And he said to his father, "My head, my head." And his father said to his servant, "Carry him to his mother." When he had carried him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her lap until noon, and then he died. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and shut the door behind him and left. Then she called to her husband and said, "Please send me one of the servants and one of the donkeys, so that I may run to the man of God and return." But he said, "Why are you going to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath." So she just said, "It will be fine." Then she saddled the donkey and said to her servant, "Drive the donkey and go on. Do not slow down the pace for me unless I tell you." So she went on and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. When the man of God saw her at a distance, he said to Gehazi, his servant, "Behold, that person there is the Shunammite. Please run now to meet her and say to her, 'Is it going well for you? Is it going well for your husband? Is it going well for the child?'" Then she answered, "It is going well." But she came to the man of God at the hill and took hold of his feet. And Gehazi came up to push her away. But the man of God said, "Leave her alone, for her soul is troubled within her. And the Lord has concealed it from me and has not informed me." Then she said, "Did I ask for a son from my Lord? Did I not say, 'Do not give me false hope'?" Then he said to Gehazi, "Get ready and take my staff in your hand and go. If you meet anyone, do not greet him. And if anyone greets you, do not reply to him. And lay my staff on the boy's face." The mother of the boy said, "As surely as the Lord lives and you yourself live, I will not leave you." So he got up and followed her. Then Gehazi went on ahead of them and laid the staff on the boy's face, but there was no sound or response. So he returned to meet him and informed him, saying, "The boy has not awakened." When Elisha entered the house, behold, the boy was dead, laid on his bed. So he entered and shut the door behind them both, and he prayed to the Lord. Then he got up on the bed and lay on the child, and put his mouth on his mouth, his eyes on his eyes, his hands on his hands, and he bent down on him, and the flesh of the child became warm. Then he returned and walked in the house back and forth once, and went up and bent down on him, and the boy sneezed 7 times. Then the boy opened his eyes. And he called Gehazi and said, "Call the Shunammite." So he called her. And when she came to him, he said, "Pick up your son." Then she came in and fell at his feet and bowed down to the ground, and she picked up her son and left. The poisonous stew. When Elisha returned to Gilgal, there was a famine in the land, and the sons of the prophets were sitting in front of him. He said to his servant, "Put on the large pot and boil stew for the sons of the prophets." Then one went out into the field to gather mallow, and found a wild vine and gathered from it his lap, full of wild gourds. And he came and sliced them into the pot of stew, because they did not know what they were. So they poured it out for the men to eat. But as they were eating the stew, they cried out and said, "You man of God, there is death in the pot." And they were unable to eat. Then he said, "Bring flour." And he threw it into the pot and said, "Pour it out for the people that they may eat." Then there was nothing harmful in the pot. Now a man came from Biayl.Shalisha and brought the man of God bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley and fresh grain in his sack. And Elisha said, "Give them to the people that they may eat." But his attendant said, "How am I to serve this to 100 men? Nevertheless, he said, "Give them to the people that they may eat. For this is what the Lord says, they shall eat and have some left over." So he served it to them, and they ate and had some left over, in accordance with the word of the Lord.
Here ends the reading for today. This and every Sunday, we always meet live on Zoom to discuss and review all the things that we've read during the week. You are invited to come to that meeting. The details to join it are in the description below, or you can find them on our website along with other resources and information about our podcast at Biayl.Project.com. Let me take the opportunity also to mention that we will be starting another Bible reading. So if you didn't start in January with us, or you started and you fell off and you would like to start over, next week, July 7, we will start the Bible from the beginning again. So we will have this podcast running in chronological order, and we'll have that one running from July this year to July next year in the order of the Tanakh, which is a Hebrew ordering of the Old Testament books, and then the New Testament will be in its regular order. So you are free to join us for that. The details of all that podcast will be presented at some point this week, so you can look out for that. But until then, happy reading, and we'll see you again here tomorrow.